and is joining. Welcome everybody to this afternoon's session. We were just discussing the weather purpose. It's very rainy here in Sofia, so Hamza, I'm sending you some rain. Just a few more seconds so that a lot of people are joining. Very popular topic nowadays. Welcome everybody to the second global session, The Human Side of Admissions in a Digital Age. When we talk about the digital age, we're really talking about a fundamental shift where nearly every part of a student's journey, from discovering universities to presenting themselves and even being evaluated, is shaped by digital systems. So admissions is no longer purely a human-to-human exchange. It's a human story, but one that is increasingly mediated by platforms and algorithms and data, which raises some very essential questions. Are we still hearing the student's authentic voice? Are universities at risk of missing the human story behind the application? And does digital access truly level the playing field, or does it create new forms of inequality? So to explore these questions today, I'm joined by an incredible panel. Barbara Prevosti, Recruitment Manager at Bocconi University. Hi, Barbara. Cliona Mcmenamin, Head of Career at Dubai College. Christina McDade, the High School Counselor at the American International School in Riyadh. And Hamza Mahoney, Counselor at the Advanced Learning School in Saudi Arabia. Thank you all for being here. I have a very irritating earbud in my ear, so sorry for removing it all the time. And I think that we are ready to start. I have prepared some very interesting questions for you, but let's see where the debate takes us. So first of all, I'd like to start with a more general, whether admissions is still human. So do you feel that admissions today is still fundamentally a human process, or has it become something else, shaped more by systems and digital structures? I will start with Cliona, as I have her first on my screen.
I think in general, it is still a human process. It's under pressure a little bit. I think everything's become a little bit more complex, more data-driven. And obviously we're trying to make things more efficient. But at the same time, we have to remember that we are dealing with people and not just those profiles. I suppose the admissions process itself, in planning for it, we have the conversations that we have, and when we've got the university reps who are talking with our students or talking with our counsellors, that's still a very human side of it. But a lot of the time, we're getting a little bit lost in, I suppose, over-relying on the platforms to help us with the admissions process, to where we get our information, what kind of outputs or how the students are applying. Are they relying a little bit too much on the AI and data systems to help them with their applications as well? Where sometimes I think things start to look the same on paper, and we need to make sure that we're making it individual to the person. So yeah, it is still a human process, but some of it's getting lost with all the data and information that we have out there and how we're working on that. I do think the relationships are going to become even more important in this, but it's whether we're losing it somewhere, that human connection along the way.
Thank you, Cliona. And moving on to Christina.
Yeah, it is definitely, there's aspects of the use of using digital structures to do our work a little bit more efficiently, right? And organizing ourselves, or like having it as a thought partner in the work that we do. But at the end of the day, those relationships that we built not only with our students and families, but also with our admissions colleagues, is important to the journey of our kids. And also it helps in the advocacy part. AI can be fantastic for supporting the work we do, but the long-term advocacy that we do for our kids, when we have a student that's on the bubble and we want to talk further with an admissions person, that relationship is quite important. And also teaching our kids the importance of that human contact, of being forthright and sending a message off to another professional in regards to where their status is and teaching them how to communicate. These are skills that no matter how we go as a society, then you still need to be successful in the long term. And so it's a struggle. I agree with my colleague that it is an ongoing struggle, but in today's world, especially, it's still a much needed aspect to the work that we do.
Thank you, Christina. And Hamza, on to you.
Good morning or good afternoon, where everyone is in the world. I believe, for example, the way I approach and support students, I do tailor-make, for example, a profile for them in terms of what their strengths are basically within the academic journey they're on at the moment, either in grade 9, 10, 11, and 12. From that information and having that foundation, I begin to basically support them in the paradigm of ensuring that they don't go down the route of using, let's say, AI resources or predominantly depending upon them, even depending upon, let's say, a family member or a friend's decision or influence in terms of this is the best university and I recommend A, B, and C. What I tend to do basically is always try and keep it simple with them in terms of asking them simple questions. What's your experience buying a pair of shoes or trainers online? Did they fit well? Would you prefer to go into a shop? And it's very similar to that, that personalized aspect of it. What type of college or university you'd like to go to? Is it important if it's close to the airport or if it's not? Is it in the city? Is it not in the city? What's the preference of parents? And I try to involve parents within it as well. So they're all taking ownership and they're all basically being involved. That enables, honestly, from my experience, that enables them to really be thinking and having a justification to their rationale in terms of making decisions. And I would say I'm very good at asking, a very important question: why? Why? And if they have a solid answer, it means that they really invested their time for the future. And if they don't, their applications do tend to unravel. For example, a student who wants to study law but doesn't like reading. There's something that's not going to be beneficial in the future for the student. So technology is great. It's easy to lose a student in the application process, but I do believe if you start early and you give them, for example, honest, genuine advice, wholeheartedly, you'll be able to catch them within that journey.
Thank you, Hamza. And Barbara, I'm moving on to you with the same question, pointing out your face of Bocconi for 27 years. Your job is predominantly meeting people in person. So has your job been affected in the last years by the digitalization of the admission process?
Hi, good morning, afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me for this panel. As a uni representative, in general, I would say yes. In particular, in the past years, immediately after COVID, what we all of us experienced was something that maybe we never thought about it, and also attending different activities online, conferences online. I noticed that the impact is very, very high from my perspective, which means we take care of students, families, counselors, but still, if the digital tools are around and they are able to help us, it's much more easy in order also to not waste our time, which means preparing documents or do something different related to specific topic. So I would say that, in my opinion, the throw is in the middle, no? So we still have a very important impact on having a relationship with students, I repeat, families and schools, but still we have also to think about that the digital structures are always around, and so there are some instruments that we can use as a human elements, yes, because we don't have to forget that we are humans and human being is always important. But unfortunately, because maybe depends how many application as a UniRep we receive, or which kind of questions, which kind of emails, how many tons of emails we receive. Of course, we need to use this kind of things, and sometimes can be we can be also lost in a way.
I understand. I think, yeah, students are really lost as well. And on that topic, I'd like to move to the topic of authenticity, which is one of the biggest tensions we are seeing nowadays. So we are seeing more and more polished AI-supported applications, which also brings more concern about the generic voices. So for you, what does authenticity actually look like today? Cliona?
I suppose the authenticity, again, it isn't about that perfectly written application. It's more about making sure that we can hear the student's voice. We can actually think about their thinking, a bit about what Hamza said in the previous question, finding out why. Why do they want to do this? What are their thoughts behind it? Have they actually looked into it, or is it just everybody else is doing this, or somebody told me this was good? So really getting through that decision making is there. And I think that's where the role of the counsellor is going to be even more important, because we are there to question that. Why are you doing this? What is the thought process behind it? The AI is great. It's there to help them generate ideas and to, I suppose, put things together. But we need to teach the students really, I suppose, how to use it properly and how to use it to support their thinking rather than replace their thinking. And I suppose that's where we're going to start seeing the authenticity. So we want them to be able to refine and reflect on what their actual thoughts are, clarify their thought process, but not generate something that's not actually theirs. So I think that's where the guidance is going to become more important. Yes, we want them to be able to use these tools, but not necessarily, they don't necessarily know how to use them without our guidance and our help.
You mentioned the counselor's role, and this morning there was a live session with Serge from Zenit Education, where that's what he mentioned, that counselors are not just administrators of documents, but their job is exactly to counsel and to guide. And more right now, this is becoming more visible and more important. And I'd like to move on to Hamza and Christina, but twist the question for them a little bit. With this, is the issue that students are using AI, or is the issue that the students don't know exactly how to use it properly? Hamza? Okay, let's move on to Christina. I saw that she unmuted herself first.
So the question, I'm going to repeat it just to be clear. The question is the problem students using AI, or the fact that they don't know how to use it, right?
Yeah.
And so it goes back to something that I will always stick in my brain when I went to an AI session with Jeff Neal, who's known as the AI person, I guess you can say, in our circles, is that artificial intelligence cannot work without human ingenuity and human intelligence. And so, again, teaching our kids know that's there. They are super smart. They have access to all the things and all the knowledge and all the resources. Our job is to assist them in the wisdom of how to use and navigate. Our parents use those tools, but they know their careers, but they don't know this job. And so they depend on this technology to guide them, because they feel like, if I'm a manager and CEO of a corporation, surely I can advise my kid on the right kind of university for them for success. However, they lack the wisdom too, and understanding that although these tools are great, our job is to guide that human intelligence and ingenuity in making decisions and choices. Going back to what Hamza was saying about we spend a lot of time on the why with our kids, knowing that each application, each contact has to be worthy of not only who they are, but also their time and also their brilliance, however their brilliance shows up. And recognize that in this world of all this knowledge and information, that they are unique individuals and there is a place for them if we take the time to really guide that wisdom to get them on that pathway and journey. I think our job as counselors is to not be afraid of these tools, but really step up and start to learn how to use them in practice so that we can properly guide our students to use their smarts and their brilliance to go through this journey that builds more so on the trust of the roles that we take, the relationships that we build outside of our school to support our students, and ultimately make the process a little bit more less daunting. I have no problem when I'm talking to my students about, so this is the tool I use to help enhance this presentation today, or talking about, if you want to use this tool, let me look at your prompt that you used and understanding what prompt engineering is and how to write a more appropriate prompt to get to the answer that really is a better fit for what you're trying to do, but also pointing out where the flaws are within this work. We can't be afraid of it. We just have to learn how to use it within the context of where we are. And I think that part is so important for them to navigate how to use it and how to be users of it.
Thank you, Christina. And moving on to Hamza, how do you help your students, and do you notice so to say, the AI battle with the students trying to perfect it more and more?
Yeah, I think the use of AI, or let's say a personal statement or answers, let's say to applications around the world, needs to be a reflection of the individual, and they need to be able to implement that information, not just in the application, however, in life itself. So, for example, if a student was identifying that they are actively engaged in a hobby, a sports hobby, or playing the piano for a number of years, and they've identified a number of benefits from it. This is something they can use moving forward in life. And students need to be aware of this in order to truly identify whom they are, what they provide, not just to an establishment, a university, a college, but to themselves and their own self-well-being. And it goes back to the question I asked students: why are you, for example, using AI to generate a personal statement? Let's spend a couple of hours and just go through certain questions to identify who you are, to basically have rooted answers that will support you in the future. And it's easy, I would say, in many capacities for a college or a university to identify by reading a text and then meeting a student online in an interview or face-to-face, that either it's a reflection or a mirror image of what they've read, or it's not. And I do remind students that you're going to university to learn. You're not expected to know the course, the faculty, and where the alumni have gone and different modules within the course. And I think it's that aspect of reducing the pressure on the students again, for them to be confident of who they are towards their applications itself. In terms of the problems, is it a problem to use AI? Is it not a problem? I think it goes back to the question of why. If a student is using, let's say, ChatGPT to identify weaknesses within their personal statement, and then reflect, for example, with their college counselor, or discuss, that could be a positive. If they are, for example, creating a whole personal statement that's not organic to themselves and it's just a replication, then that's a problem. So I do believe it goes down to the question of why with the students. And with the question of why, there's an answer to ourselves, or myself as a counselor, of how the student could be supported.
Thank you, Hamza. And Barbara, a question for you. Can you give us some glimpse of how has digitalization helped universities in Bocconi in this case better assess students, better evaluate students, you know, the amount of students and applications that you get? How does it help you?
Sorry, was unmuted. So we can split this question into when we talk about, if I think about the prospective students, as you said, Nia, related to admissions, so prospective students who they need to apply, I would say that they don't help a lot. In particular, in my case, because as you know, or maybe you don't know, Bocconi is not using an holistic approach in terms of admission. So we are so academic. So we take care of transcript from the high school and standardized tests as SAT, ACT, or our own test. What we have noticed that, of course, in the Bocconi, on the Bocconi test, of course, AI is around, and there are some very few, not a lot, example of cheating, for example, that they find a way to pass the test. But thanks to the AI, vice versa, Bocconi University is able to be against of this kind of things. When we talk about Bocconi students, which means they are regularly enrolled in the university, I was happy to hear a lot of this kind of information from my colleague here, because we have the same problem, no? So I think from a university perspective, we need to teach them how to use AI tools also at the university, because they don't know. They use just a ChatGPT, they copy and paste, they do the final thesis, but they don't know exactly what does it mean, the topic, which is different, this kind of information when they are graduate from master program at Bocconi, because in this case, they have to evaluate, they have to work on the final thesis, final report, so they are not able to use AI tools. But at the bachelor level, because they are not discussing with professor and talking with professor, of course, using AI tools, it's much more easy, but not fruitful, if I have to say, because we immediately notice that the human part is not in the process. They don't put efforts, they don't say anything coming from them, no? So the human aspect is totally neutral, I would say.
So then moving on to Cliona, why do you think that is? Hamza asked the same question. Why? Why would a student go and use ChatGPT or any of these services to write their essay rather than sit down, brainstorm, and write it? Is it the idea of perfection? Is it the idea that they think universities want to read a particular thing? Is it being afraid? What do you think it is?
I think for many of our students, it is that perfectionism. They want to show themselves to be the best they possibly can be, and they think that AI will do that for them. One of the things that I always say to the students is, it's a quote, before you stand out, you need to know what you stand for. And they're not going to stand out if they're using someone else's words to describe themselves, because they're not going to come across as confident. They're not going to be that person selling themselves. They're selling what AI has told them to say. And you cannot come across as confident if you don't actually believe or understand completely what you're saying. So I think that's the main thing. And one of the things that I do try to work on with our students is that they really need to understand themselves first. All of that information, they need to come back to what they enjoy, what they like to learn, how they learn, what kind of environment they need to be in, to understand where they want to be, as well as how they're going to get there. I think that's a huge part of it. So yeah, the students want to be going for the prestigious universities. They want to go with the best application that they think they can put forward. But it may be that on paper, but a lot of the time, when, as Barbara said, when they have to be able to defend that, or when they have to be able to discuss it, they can't do it as well because they don't understand everything that's written there.
which leads me to my next question about the access to information, which is abundant nowadays, website, rankings, forums, AI tools. Students have all this immense amount of information, which leads to some confusion and not necessarily to better decisions. So, Christina, for you, are students becoming more informed or just more overwhelmed with information?
More overwhelmed for sure. Like again, it goes back to how comfortable are we as the adults in the room working with our students to guide them through this stuff, right? Especially if they're navigating the responsibilities of IB and testing and da da da. How are we helping them to navigate through all this information, through all this noise, and making it normal to getting comfortable and getting into the normality of like, this is overwhelming. How can we smartly use this tool to navigate? And so, for example, like a kid will just put in the basic things. What's the top engineering programs in the world for this topic? But they're not giving all the information. They're not giving their own background, like where their GPA or where their scores may be. They're not giving a little bit more nuanced details to guide that information to get the right kind of information to start to disseminate. And that's where we can come into play as well on that journey and process. I think too, I want to go back to like the whole overthinking and perfectionism part of it. The reason why these products and these tools are so popular is because of the intense pressure, especially of brown folks, people of color, people from the global south, knowing that the feeling is that to be successful, you have to pursue this Ivy, this top 10, this name brand H&M t-shirt school. And that kind of pressure for a student gets into the whole perfectionism thinking, and it gets into using tools in a way that is not helpful for their long run future. And also, I think too, we don't give universities enough credit either. I'm looking at the chat down below. If anyone out here ever has a chance to actually sit down or go through like maybe a different training with a university on the application reads and stuff like that, they have a good eye, that again, that human intelligence eye, to go through and point out where the words on the AI word on the essay page doesn't match up against what the words are being said by the teacher, by that recommendation, and ultimately their academic biography of their grades. And so that part, it has to be part of the conversation that we have with our parents and with our students too, as well. Again, we can't be afraid of these tools. Our job, on top of all the other jobs that we have, is to help them navigate through it and not become another person saying, no, you can't, but more so, let's stop overthinking and learn how to use this in the right kind of way.
Thank you, Christina. And Hamza, for this question, I'd like to bring part of your well-being counselor side and ask you, how can you help students stay connected to their own identity in this process of finding information in the world of abundance of information?
You're asking a lot. With many presentations with parents and students, I always remind them that it's okay not to be okay in the journey of applications. And it's okay to be lost. And it's okay not to have the answers. And I feel that that's so important for students and parents, and also myself, in terms of allowing them to journey through at their pace what they need to accomplish. And that's why it's important to start early. Some students, for example, are fully aware that they want to study medicine, they want to study law, or they're academically, fortunate, or they're financially fortunate, and other students may not have that. And, being a counselor, you're working at the pace of many different students with different applications. And the well-being of students is predominantly just sometimes sitting down, and giving them that space just to say, I'm stressed out, I'm frustrated, I got another rejection, and holding that space with them in their pace at times, and just reminding them that through the challenges and through the uncertainty and through the rejections that they're all going to get, there's nuggets of guidance, and there's nuggets of goodness, and there's nuggets of growth, and just helping them to really identify those. And it may be, just going back, and reminding them 6 months ago you hadn't applied to university. 6 months ago you hadn't, for example, even done an interview. 6 months ago you weren't aware of, how positive your personal statement would be. So basically, these are important aspects to remind the students, because the world they're in right now is so globally connected, and there's so much competitiveness, not just in the academic world, but in the world of social media. And students are driven in many different ways. And just giving them that space to slow down and allowing them just to be themselves, to find themselves, to trust the process. That's so important. And then on the other side, ourselves as counselors, it's so important just to remind ourselves that we're doing our best, and we don't have the ability to know everything. And we are going to be challenged by students and parents. And that's okay, because our journey right now is to basically support students to the best of our ability. And with events like this, and with open discussion, and with the guidance that we support one another with, we are doing our best.
Thank you, Hamza. I want to move on to the topic of inequality in the digital age. That was something that we discussed during our prep meeting, and I told you the story of a counselor from Togo. Arsen, I don't think that he's here right now in this session, but he's helping students from high-achieving students from low-income families apply to universities abroad. And he mentioned the difficulties they have. Some of them don't have proper electricity and water, not to mention 24-hour access to internet. So do you think that in the situations of such students, are digital tools actually reducing inequality as we usually think, or are they creating new gaps between the students? Barbara, you said you needed some time to figure it out. What did you figure out?
It depends. This is, of course, not a very easy or difficult question. So it depends on the students. It depends how they, for example, live in their country. I really appreciate the word from Hamza right now, or saying, for example, we are not perfect, absolutely. And from the university perspective, we are not perfect as well. So we try to do our best. You mentioned about water, electricity, this kind of inequality. It happens also in the university. So it's up to the students to talk to us. We have, for example, in our case, a Bocconi counseling office where they can refer to if they have problems, not only related to very technical, pragmatic stuff, but also for this kind of, for example, these kind of subjects. So inequality depends on disability, it depends on the exams, it depends on dorms, it depends on where students want to go out for that evening. It depends from the country. So it's a very global and very different, I would say, argument that we can talk about it. So my answer should be yes, inequality exists, and we have to learn the lessons, in my opinion, how to help our students from the beginning. So I really personal thanks to all of you, also the participants at this session, because the job you do is absolutely fundamental for us as a university rep. I see now there is the competition to get in good university is so much. You're talking with a person who is representing a very competitive university. Yeah, it's inequality. Yeah, competition, demanding. These kind of words are part of my job now quite regularly, daily. But being better me as a human being, and maybe most of you knows me, and I try to help families and students to be no different from another one. So I try to help all of them to be part of the process, whatever, admission, funding, fees, dorms, technically speaking, but put an eye on the let's say, human being side. So overwhelming, yes, I totally agree with Christina, as she said, they are not confused. They know perfectly what to do, in my opinion, because at the end, when we push them as a counselor or as a uni rep, they perfectly know what to do, which kind of way to follow. But sometimes they need this kind of AI tools, instruments to navigate and serving and survive in this kind of world, I would say, and new environment they are, of course, they want to attend as a university.
Survival mode. Yep. Cliona, moving on to you with the same question, but I wanted to change it and twist it a little bit. You come from a school where you have the resources to prepare your students how to use AI tools. And we're not here talking only about the low-income students, but also students from regular public schools that don't have these resources. But do you think that this can actually be to their advantage in the sense that then they will provide applications that are more authentic and more human and speaking more their own voices?
Yeah, I think in the first place, it's great in the fact that no matter where we are in the world, that we can explore these universities. You can attend sessions and you can connect globally. So that's a great starting point. But I do think in the fact that students that don't have access or don't have as much access will be much more authentic because they're going to think more outside the box, think about their own experience and not necessarily use that AI to prompt their application. I do think the most important thing probably is the relationship that the schools have with the universities now, so that the universities actually know what context our students are coming from. Are they coming from a school like mine where they have access to AI, where they have access to people to tell them how to use it and help them working with it? Or are they coming from somewhere that won't have as much even internet access, never mind AI access? And is this going to be, I suppose, a more authentic application because they haven't had that help? So I think that relationship with universities is something that we really need to build on, so that the universities know the context the students are actually coming from.
And are aware. Thank you. And Christina, how about you?
Couldn't find my mouse there for a second. So it's complicated. It's not simple, right? So one of the things that I've been blessed to be able to do is to work at a school that had a mixture of those who had and those who did not, and those who needed scholarship just to get by. And I think it is the question of privilege in conversations like this, where students who tend to come from means, and I'm not saying all students who come from means, but students who tend to come from places of means feel a obligation, and even, dare I say, they are privileged to be able to have resources. And they feel that because I come from this situation, because I have access to these things, therefore I'm important enough in this application process, I can use whatever I want. Kids who tend to not have those same kind of privileges have to approach things in a different way because those resources aren't available every day. And so because of that, agreeing with Cliona on this one, is that the ability and freedom to take away from the overarching, I'm coming from this kind of family and I'm coming from this kind of privilege. Students who don't have that kind of access have the freedom to think differently on how they have to approach things, mainly because of time and resources, and also the level of help and support that they get from amazing counselors and community-based organizations who do this thoughtful work every single day. Even and from my own privileged stance of the school where I used to work at before, the work that needs to be done to try to level the playing field just somewhat for students who do not come from those means and privileges means that students have to be celebrated to think outside the box and supported. And again, our job, which you can't do using AI, is advocating for those students and for those counselors who are doing that work as well. And in that process, it's important to note that their voices tend to do come out more authentic, or quote unquote authentic. I have a love-hate relationship with that word, because of the fact that they also understand and know that this is my only chance that I have to possibly get a different degree, to move forward in a different way, and access to the services and support that I need to be to want to be successful. But even the definition of success comes and hits differently. Our issue as counselors is that sometimes our families lead us down a path of focusing only on the few. But when you're working with students who need additional assistance, high achieving, low income students who bring all their wit and knowledge and uniqueness to the table, it forces you to think beyond just the few and think of what schools are available to help and assist them on their journey. And when we come from a place of understanding that, we help our students come from a place of being their true selves. And those kind of things you cannot get off of an app or off of any kind of AI tech. It takes time. I think our other job too, for those of us in these schools and privileged situations, is to figure out a way to support organizations that are doing the work to support these students who don't have the same kind of access that our kids may have as well. I think if anything, that's our call. That's our requirement as well. We want to help our kids, but to help our kids, we want to make sure that they are competing against the best. And the best is not necessarily the school that is in the same kind of area and district, but more so, where can we spend our hours and time and need to level that playing field for our kids, for all our kids.
Thank you. And Hamza, I saw you nodding in agreement with Christina. So would you like to add to what she said?
I'm nodding in agreement, and I don't think there's anything I can really add to, to what's been said already. Just to highlight the fact that, and I say it to students, is this is not the only time you need to apply to university. This is not the only time or the chance that you have to decide upon, what course you want to do. And I remind students of, the ability to change universities after a foundation year or a first year, to the skills to identify if, they're enjoying or benefiting from the university itself. And I always remind students that, congratulations, you get an undergrad degree. Is that it? That's the end of the road in education. You're parting ways after that. So I always remind students in the aspect of, this is a strong starting point for a long-term relationship in the academic world, and things may not, for example, materialize with the first application, and it may not be, smooth sailing. However, there's benefits and learnings from the challenges. So I think I'd leave it as that. Yeah.
Thank you for this. 45 minutes of our global session just flew by. So I'm going to move to another part of the title of the session, the human side of the admission. And my question for the counselors will be, could personal circumstances like family hardships or health challenges play a role in admission decisions? And then I'm going to move on to Barbara with a little bit of a twist in this question, but I'd like to hear it first from the counselors. Cliona.
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute there. So you're asking, should personal circumstances play a role in the admission decisions? Was that
Yeah.
the question? Yeah, I think they should. They are part of the student story overall. We can't separate their achievements from the context. Two students may have the same grades, but they may have had a completely different journey on how they got there, the struggles that they faced, or what we talked about earlier, the privilege that they've had. So we should really be taking that into consideration. I think a more holistic approach, if it's done well, it's going to reflect the human side of the admissions much more. It's going to make sure that we have a student who is much more suited to what we want, if we're thinking about them in a more holistic way, rather than just the grades or just an assessment. I suppose the aim isn't really there to lower the standards. I think we really do have to think about the full picture. Is this student going to cope when we take them into the university? Yes, they need to be able to cope academically, but they also need to be able to cope socially and mentally while they're there. And their well-being and their mental health is going to be a huge part of when they're in the university and how they actually cope and relate to what's going on. Can they access all of the material because of who they are rather than just what their grades are?
Thank
Yeah.
you, Cliona. Christina?
Yeah, I'm just agreeing with that. Especially, and I'm going to take it to a U.S. university focus. Oftentimes, students skip the section on if there's any other circumstances or things that you want a university rep to know about your high school journey. And a lot of students or families advise their kids not to use that section because they don't want to look weak or look like they are lacking in something. But over and over again, talking to other admissions people and things like that, they want that section. It's there for a reason because they want to try to create a picture of the kid who's applying to their school. And the more complete the picture, the better the opportunity is for that student to show and tell their story in a very real way. And some students take advantage of it too much and want to talk about like their pet dying, or I don't know. But if it's a part of their story that can't be articulated clearly through their academic biography or their transcript and through their personal statement, then using that moment to also provide a different take on your story, and it's in the book that they're writing for their admissions process is quite key and important in the journey. I appreciate it when schools have that section, and again, our job is to help them to utilize it in a smart way, because every hole is a question within their application. If they're grades drop in junior year and the kid doesn't explain why, then that's just going to show that their grades dropped in their junior year. But if there's other things that are happening, this current situation that we're in right now, how it has affected students in different ways in different parts of the GCC alone, will affect how those stories will be coming out in the application process in the fall. And so helping them to navigate and own their voice in that section, that could be a really good benefit for them in sharing their story and their journey.
Thank you, Christina. Hamza, during our conversation, you were also very adamant that human point of view should be part of the admissions. So do you think the personal circumstances should make it into the application process?
Absolutely, in every capacity, because the application itself starts with a simple instruction and guideline, personal information. So predominantly it's personal throughout. And that's what makes each applicant's journey so important. And students should be in a position to basically express, let's say, challenges that they feel they've faced. And a challenge that they faced may not be, for example, something that's viewed upon from someone else as a huge challenge until it's the reader has journeyed through their few paragraphs, of what they've experienced. And I can give you an example. For example, like in Saudi at the moment, in some parts of the world, some students are going to be in a position not to sit for the IB exams, and other students are being asked to sit for the IB exams. And there's a lot of frustration going on at the moment. And for example, students that I'm supporting are going to be asked to sit for the IB exams, and they need to basically let that out. And one of them has said, I'm emailing the university, and they emailed the admissions office. And they basically said it like this, I've been asked to sit for the IB external exams, and this is my situation, and this is what I've experienced, and I really feel it's unfair, And I'm even thinking of maybe taking time out before, I go to university. And they got a call from the admissions office, and the call they got, from what they expressed to myself, was the fact that, just look after yourself. Just do your best. We understand, from what you shared with us, what you're going through, and we're there to support you. So I do believe, just students and counselors just allowing the students to have that platform, parents allowing the students to have the platform to take real life decisions by expressing what they've gone through in a humanistic point of view, enables them to really grow as individuals and, mold and shape into the individuals that are planning to be in the future. So absolutely, it's personal in every aspect. And I feel that's why I really appreciate university representatives visiting the school, as well as, holding webinars and everything in meetings, because students have that physical connection with someone rather than a portal and this is the screen you have to do and press next. So it's so important, in that aspect.
Thank you, Hamza, and thank you for sharing the story of the student. It was today at the office that we actually discussed this part with the IB exams, that many students would feel it to their detriment, why one student should sit the exam and the other shouldn't. Barbara, I said I'd like to twist my question for you as a uni rep a little bit. So do you think that the more structured academic only model or a more holistic model better reflects the human side of the admissions?
I have different answers on this, to be honest, because first of all, I'm not the admissions officer, but I'm a guidance and recruitment officer. So I totally agree with Hamza when said, thank you, that if a uni rep is coming to university, in a school or doing a panel, informing, having a one-to-one meeting, calls, drop a line, we are always able to answer, and we are always proactive, helping them. So for my point of view, first of all, admissions officer is not only related to select candidates. It's also a sort of, let's say, shaping communities, no? So we talk about diversity, creativity. So we are used to put an eye on all of this. There are some universities a lot in the world who are taking care of, let's say, structured process, as you said, Nia, or the other one. It depends, of course, on the strategy of the university, what they really want to do, which is really fundamental, no, for us. In my opinion, it's important to not to have in mind to have, let's say, a pure mechanical process where we used to say, okay, these are the documents. And I feel guilty say that because this is what I do as Bocconi rep, because Bocconi is not having an holistic approach. It's pure academic, so numbers. But again, doing that, the risk is to build, let's say, environment that are efficient. So sometimes I tell to my student ambassador, you are like a machine, no? Because they study, they do internship, they do exchange, they think about their future, masters and stuff like that. So mechanical machines, yes. Where is the human side? aspects from the process until the end of the university. So machine, but let's say not enriching the process. So in my opinion, we have to take care of both sides, so structured and not structured, let's say, admission and taking care of our students properly. And the most important thing, you have the opportunity, I'm so jealous about it because this is not part of my job, that you can talk with them. You spend hours, as Christina said before, on the top of everything, we have to do also this job. So thank you so much for doing that, because as a uni rep, we don't have time. This is not part of our job. We are very precise and structured, and again, in this case, to analyze all the student profiles we have, and sometimes works, sometimes not. We take care of their personal issues, families issues, stuff like that. Again, it depends on the university. In my case, at Bocconi, unfortunately not. Even if, let me tell you that you were mentioning about the IB situation right now in your region. At Bocconi, I got some emails from students who were in panic, and I was discussing with Cliona yesterday, for example. But at Bocconi, for example, right now, we take care of this because we perfectly know this is completely out of their hands, I would say. So we are always transparent. Transparency is always important to all of us. And in particular, when I'm talking about Bocconi, we are very clear giving you an answer. In this case, we are waiting for Italian authorities, but now the situation is clear. So we recognize the IB because the selection is done before the IB diploma at Bocconi, at least.
Thank you, Barbara. As we're running out of time and have just 3 minutes left, I wanted to have more time to discuss the role of the counselors and how it has evolved. So very quickly, my question for the counselors would be, how has your role changed with the digitalization of the application and admission process? Cliona?
I suppose the main thing is that there are so many tools available now that we need to make sure that the students know that, yes, it's all out there, but that we're there to help them make sense of what's out there. I think that's the main thing. They have lots and lots of access to things, but how can we help them to make sure that they're using the right information and not just everything that's been piled on? And I suppose that's where the main thing is. We're seeing that the counsellors are not replaceable by the AI. We need to build that relationship with the students. We need to have that they actually trust us and they trust that we have the correct information, or we can get it from the advisors like Barbara, who actually know direct from the university. We can talk to people directly. And I think the fact that the students should be able to, hopefully, that we can build that relationship and help them to trust us is going to be the big part of it. AI is there to support the process, but it's not going to be able to replace that human understanding and the trust that we have.
Thank you. And Christina, how has AI and similar tools changed your role, counselor?
It just has forced me to continue to be a learner in the work that we do, and show kids that it's okay to still learn. That learning does not stop after you get admitted to college. It doesn't stop after you get your first degree. That to be on top of what's happening in the world, you have to be a consistent learner who is open to ideas, but also owning your why, who you are, and how that filters in for you, and giving them that safe space to do it. And I also think a big part of that too is also educating our parents as well. Because they're operating also in fear, and also the fear of disappointing their kids because they didn't prepare them for their future. And so finding that balance of not only the work that we do with our students, but also making sure we educate our parents on this journey as well is quite important, especially with all the information that's out there.
Thank you, Christina. And Hamza, back to you.
I think it's made my role a lot harder because I'm not an individual school counselor who's going to give an instant answer like AI or something like this. And I'm I'm there to journey with the students and the parents. Also in terms of the development of tech and taking place, it doesn't just impact students and parents, it also impacts the dynamics of counselors, with many companies reaching out to you with the latest and greatest tools to help students get into 1, 2, and 3 and everything. So the workload increases, and with that, I always remind myself that the priority within all of this is myself. And it may sound very selfish, but it's the reality. Because if I'm unwell, if I'm not doing my best, then the students and parents and the school community are not receiving the best of me. So the work has increased, but it's a greater opportunity to really be present and to really engage and to really slow down, to support students and parents, and most importantly, mind oneself. That's what I would suggest.
Thank you for this, even a little bit selfish point of view, but that's exactly what yesterday in the topic of long counselors, the two counselors pointed out. You should be the one who's okay, then the students would be okay too. Barbara?
I totally against AI. So at the end of the session, I can tell you. So I totally trust human being. I totally trust human side. So that's my Barbara perspective, of course. So to preserve, in my opinion, to preserve human side of admission, because we were talking about story, we need to recognize that behind all the stories, there is someone who's listening to you, and the story is to be understood by another human. That's my opinion, to be honest.
Thank you, Barbara. And with that, we have to end the session so that everybody can get to their meetings. Thank you very much to the speakers and to the audience. My intake from what we discussed so far is that the human element is not just still very relevant in the applications and admissions, but it's the most essential element. And also what I understood is with all the digital tools, counselors still have more work than before. So nobody has invented the proper digital tool so far, obviously. Thank you again very much, and I'll see you in the closing session of the e-conference. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.